Welcome to Mondays Learn with BeautySlesh. I'm so excited because today's a Monday and finally this video is up on YouTube. And as it was requested, I had made a video for the topic why my microblading feels blurry and patchy. So basically in this tutorial I will show you how to make your microblading look crisp and heal crisp, as it's very possible, and microblading does look good if it is done correctly. So I hope you like this video. Leave your comment if you do so, and let's dive into today's video. In this video I want to show you and want to explain you why your microblading look blurry and how to correct that, how to have a nice crisp result without patches and blurriness. So I want to clear it out for you and tell you the reasons why and how you can fix it. There is nothing wrong with complicated patterns, but the trick is how you deposit the pigment again inside the same stroke. Just having the first path is not enough for the ink to be inside there, so you do have to slowly and nicely deposit the pigment inside each stroke. But what happens is when you try to deposit the pigment inside the same cut, you are making it blurry, so you're making a double stroke, or you are pushing the ink too hard inside and it will go deeper on your second path. So what you have to learn, what we will learn today, is how to get maximum out of your first path. So on your first path you will have already very nicely pigment line inside your cuts, and then I will show you how to do your second path so that you are done with the brow and you don't have to come and go so many times back and forth and make your strokes blurry. So now let me show you how I do my first path and how to place the pigment correctly. First of all, the amount of the pigment on your microblading tool should be just a tiny bit. Now, if this is your skin, what is important first is just to tap the ink on the skin, so you have some ink on the skin, and now once the ink is there you can slide through. That easy. Now sometimes I do another way. I feel this way I can slide through the pigment even better. First thing, you tap with the pigment now on the skin, now you slide through, and then you slide through further one more time. So basically you're making sure you're sliding the pigment till the end of your stroke. What if you do not tap? Then if you start with sliding, you see what is the difference? You won't have your pigment at the first place, so it will be empty. But so if you tap, then you slide, and then you slide further, you're making sure the ink is everywhere. Now I do use the nano needles, that's why the healed result is more crispier and it's easier to slide the ink through. And I do recommend to use actually nano needles, not even for this purposes, just because you don't want to make the scars for your clients. As you know, microblading is not the best technique. It does leave the scars if your needles are thick and if your depth is too deep, but that's something we can talk in the next videos, but just to let you know. Now the second thing I want to show you, so this is how I do my first path, very slowly, very accurately, stroke by stroke, drawing the whole brow. It's not a random, it's slowly depositing the pigment inside. Now the second thing, after you've done the strokes, I do take the dry tissue And if I want to wipe the ink, first thing is I wipe with the dry tissue. Because if you use the wet tissue, you will dilute the pigment inside the cut. After I wipe out with a dry tissue, I rub the pigment inside and leave it to soak for 5 to 10 minutes. And just a small reminder, I have 2 Instagram accounts. One is BeautySlesh, another one is Learn BeautySlesh. So there's a lot of useful information there. We can connect, and let's get back to the video. And now I want to show you how you should practice depositing the pigment on your second path, because this is so important. This is even more important than having your first path done. So the way I insert my pigment again into the same cut is slowly. So I do not push deeper inside the skin. I do this just even more on top than my first path. But what I do is slowly slide. You see, I just want to show you this was wrong. Just because I'm sitting under the camera, my position is very, I do not feel comfortable when I sit right now. And now I made this double stroke. I just really want to show you this. And it's so easy to make the double stroke. It's really easy. That's why the second path is the hardest. So you have to make sure you can clearly see what you're doing. You have to make sure your eyes are, you can see it. So even leaning closer to your strokes would be good. And second thing, make sure you position yourself so you feel comfortable and your hand is stable. Let's try again. Okay, that was nice. And let's try again. Okay, that was also clean and nice. Try again. Okay. And for your second path, try to take a little bit less pigment so that you see where you slide your and you can slide through the cut several times, 3, 4, 5 times with the pigment, just to make sure the pigment is there. And again, it's not cutting the cut, it's just sliding through the pigment. The pressure is light, the depth is even lighter than the first path. The way you practice your microblading patterns is not only you are drawing your first path, but you are doing your second path just like I showed you before. And now it's time for me to also show you some trick I do as well on my first path. Is if I do the stroke on my first path, I tap, I slide, and then I actually can slide one more time, because I have a control of my tool, so I can slide even 3 times on my first path the same exact stroke, and that would be enough. You don't even have to do your second path, because the pigment will be there already. So that's just a tiny trick I can tell you. So maybe when you practice, you can do your first path, then doing this one more time, then the second stroke, then again you insert the pigment inside the second stroke. And I encourage you to take even to work on inkless latex is really nice, and it's really good to see if the pigment is there, so you can work on your inkless latex with the ink. So you, for instance, if this is your first path, then first stroke, then you do again, then one more time, and you do again. Each stroke 2 times. This is one practice. Another practice is you do each stroke, just draw 1 time but then you do the second path on it throughout the whole brow again. And these you alternate. So just to sum up how I do the microblading is I really carefully insert the pigment on my first path. Even I could do more than once doing the cut for my just one hair stroke, and then I wipe the ink with a dry tissue. I leave the ink to soak, and then I can come back and insert 3 or 4 times again the pigment inside the same cut. I think in general I will have 2 passes only. Passes means I will come back to this side of the brow, but then the times I insert the pigment inside the same cut could be 5, 6, 3. It doesn't matter, as long as I see the pigment is there, then I am satisfied. And again, I'm not cutting the skin, I'm just making sure I slide the pigments through inside to distribute it evenly throughout the cut. That's it. So I'm not going any deeper. I still remain my very shallow depth, very light pressure, but then very accurately insert the pigment. If you do have any questions left, or if you feel it's still confusing for you, just leave your comment under this video and I will be happy to answer you. You can also send me the message on Instagram, BeautySlesh or Learn BeautySlesh. And I will see you on the next Mondays with Mondays Learn with BeautySlesh.